Before we begin the episode, I would like to thank our sponsor, Chin Up Goggles, the new generation of vision training. Its simplistic design eliminates downward vision, improving a player's spatial awareness, anticipation, skill acquisition and execution. The findings have been supported by scientific research in CIT, now MTU. Be sure to visit chinupgoggles.com for more. Welcome back to the Sideline Live podcast. You can follow us over on Twitter and Instagram at the Sideline Live. We'd love to hear from you. On episode 60, I'm delighted to be joined by GC Mercy Superleague head coach Mark Ingle. In this episode, we discuss coaching men versus women, player responsibility, skills, the most underrated skill in the game, recognising talent, leadership, and so much more. I hope you enjoyed the episode. Hi Mark, thanks a million for joining me on the podcast.
You're welcome, delighted to be here.
Before we get into your coaching career, I know your family were heavily involved in sport, were they?
Well, both families really, like my father's family were big into boxing. And the first Irishman to ever win a European championship was Jimmy Ingle. And they were also into a bit of soccer. My father was one of the founder members of St. Kevin's Boys. And then he married my mother, obviously. And their family had two League of Ireland players, Francis Swan and Tommy Swan, both played for bows and drums and shells. So I've kind of been immersed in it since I've been 5 years of age.
Yeah, and where did the basketball come in?
I put boxing now.
Oh, did you not? No, I was about to say, did you do any of the boxing or soccer?
No, I went down to Ringsend one day at about 6 years of age and got a few clatters. And
you said that's enough.
That was the stick to the soccer. Yeah. The basketball took off really when we moved house. We moved out from Ballybock out to. I lived on literally on the divide between Killester and Raheny.
Okay.
So I would have started playing basketball in the car park in Killester, and then I joined Killester Club, and then obviously I was playing in St. Paul's Raheny, and there was a priest there called Father Lyne, who was really well known for doing the basketball. He kind of did it at committee level and stuff, and he kept dragging me back to the game, So like I wasn't that good at basketball, or the coach didn't think I was that good, but I was pretty good at soccer, so. It was very hard to deal with being like not getting your game much or, sitting on the bench. And but the priest kept dragging me back. Come on back, come on. So eventually I went back and kept playing. And then I got a real interest in it. And, we formed Delta Basketball Club with Bride Saunders. There was a girls section and then a men's section. And then started playing from there really, and that developed my interest in it.
When did you get involved in the coaching side of things?
Well, there was a girls team in Delta, and one of the guys on the men's team was supposed to coach them, and he wouldn't anyway. So I got roped into it. And then I said, you know what, I'll take an underage team. And there was an underage team, a couple of kids from Mercy College in Coolock. So they were joining the club. So I went up to the school and started coaching the school teams. And then if you start doing well, then you get kind of interested in the Irish teams. So I coached the Irish under 15s and 16s for about, between assistant coach and coach for about 10 years. And then really sort of made a life decision then. There was a job came up in Loretto, Foxrock, and I was printing at the time. But the printing was really changing, obviously, with, computers coming in and stuff. And, the whole world was changing, really, like with the technology. So I just made the decision to go into coaching full-time.
And what do you see as the difference? I've asked a couple of coaches this, between coaching men and women. Do you change your approach much for when you deal with both genders?
That's the $1 million question that every coach wants to know. We were out for a coffee last night with Mick Bowen from the Dublin Ladies, and Gary Cal, who's a tennis coach, he's coaching a professional girl from Russia. And that was the topic of conversation. It's like, it is, you know, the approach probably isn't the same. Maybe the way you deal with things is a little bit different. You know what I mean? In the management side of things, you know, there's certain things you'll say to guys that you won't say to girls, and vice versa. But if any of the girls are watching this that I coach, they're roaring laughing right now. Do you know what I mean? Because they probably go, he doesn't change his approach. He doesn't care. You're either doing your job as a basketballer or you're not. You know,
Yeah.
There's a little bit of that, but I think it depends on the personality of the coach. You know.
Yeah. Okay. That makes sense.
I might hold back and use nicer language when I'm talking to the girl. I don't know. You know it.
Yeah.
No, look, basically, most young players, or boys or girls, they want to get better.
Yeah.
And if they know your stuff and you're going to make them better, you know, they usually do it. From my point of view, the girls will do exactly as you tell them. Like, I mean, if you say, for instance, we're going to cut to the basket, then we're going to set a screen over there, and then there's going to be a down screen. They'll do exactly as it says on the tin. The guys might, you know, freelance a bit more. You know, that's usually what happens in basketball. Like, the men's side of things and the boys' side of things is more freelance, and they, you know, they're more individualistic than the girls would be. You know, I think you know, any good coach watching the Superleague over the last 10 years, 15 years, a lot of the good coaches have been in the women's side of things. Not saying that the good coaches aren't in the men, but they're two different types of game. Like, the men be more, we're going down, we're passing the ball, we're shooting. The girls might go down the floor and go, hold on a second now, we have a play here, and our coach wants us to run our play. But it also depends on the coach. You know, if the coach is a freelance coach, you know, like some of the coaches I come up against, they're probably shooting the ball after the first or second pass.
Yeah. Yeah, I know what you mean.
And some of the coaches that I watch in the girls maybe are trying to copy what's going on in the NBA. Now, I don't know if that's the way to go. You know what I mean? But like, that's up to them. And so the style is evolving the whole time of who you're coaching against. You know, both my sons are coaching. Sean is coaching out in Malahide, and Stephen's coaching in he's doing his PE in DCU, but he's coaching in Loretto and the Green. Now, they'd be kind of a little bit, as they say themselves, a little bit more modern than me. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I refute that publicly on the sideline live. I refute that. But no, so it depends on you developing your style. You know, like, I'd have no problem now, you know, hooking up with them, because they're all coaching in a club. Between Damien Seeley, Sean, Stephen, and myself, we've got a kind of a streamlined coaching where we have a kind of set menu, develop a style of play, and then, you know, they've each got their own individual stamp on what they want to do as regards sets and plays and inbounds plays. You know, I'm not adverse to robbing a few of theirs.
Yeah.
You know.
How do you find it watching your sons coach, and starting off, maybe, did you give them any advice?
Don't go into coaching. And no, they actually, you know, they kind of picked it up because they had a love for basketball, you know.
Yeah.
So I didn't really influence, but obviously influence was there, you know, when they'd watched me coaching like DCU Mercy for so long, and, you know, they would have picked up on a lot of the stuff that I've done, you know. They'd be far nicer to me, I will say that.
And out of interest, you mentioned Mick Bowen there and the tennis coach. Is that something you do often, where you connect with other coaches and share ideas, or try pick out some of the stuff they're doing at all?
Yeah, you would. I'd meet Mick now for a coffee, you know, every couple of months. And obviously, you know, working with the Dubs with him, you know, when you're sitting down practice or before practice, or you're sharing ideas the whole time, you know, and vice versa, you know. But yeah, we would meet regularly, like even with Gary Cal, the tennis coach, and, you know, how would you deal with this situation? with this particular player. His is an individual sport, where ours is a team sport. But like, players have individual problems when they're on the team, or they can't make training, which is like, what? You can't make training, why can't you make training? And then it comes down to time management, and then it comes down to, well, if I don't make training, am I going to play the next game? I'm going to start the next game, but I'd be very much, you have to let them off for exams. You have to let them off for certain things, right?
Yeah.
But at the same time, if your spot is in jeopardy, like, I don't mean your spot is in jeopardy. You're playing well, but someone's been training 3 times a week. You only made 1. You're not starting ahead of her.
Yeah.
It's like, it's not her fault that you have exams or you're studying for an exam, or whatever the deal is, they're going away for a few days. You go away in the middle of the season and we've an important game, you're kind of putting your spot under pressure, not me. I think like the fair system where everybody, like, that probably goes back to when I played in school, where I was probably training all the time. I didn't miss training. And someone who wasn't training might get picked ahead of you. And I couldn't stand that,
Yeah.
So within reason, you train, you play. And my sons have picked that up. You train, you play. If you're not trained, you're not playing.
Yeah, I coach underage GAA, and I would think the same along those lines. Out of interest, with your time with Mick and with Jim, I'm not going to ask too much about football, but was there anything you picked up from the setups or the culture? And is there anything, like, GAA looks at basketball a lot, but out of interest, is there anything that basketball coaches can pick up from GAA at all, do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, first of all, the 2 setups with Jim and Mick are first class. Like, it's a high performance environment for both the men and for women, and both of them have to be credited with, how they've done that. And, when you go into the setup at the start, you're kind of sitting back and taking it in. So, I'd probably be jealous of both the setups, because we'd love that for basketball, but like, you just don't have access or the funding to do the same thing, even though I'd be quite proud of the way our club and the way we have set up DCU Mercy with Ken Robinson, and then lately with James Galvin, who's the head of sport in DCU, and he's been fundamental in bringing the scholars into DCU, and also through sport changes life. So we've kind of put things together in a way to make the environment better. And really, anybody that comes to play for us, they only have to worry about basketball. They don't have to worry about anything else, So I probably learned that from Jim and from Mick, as well as like how to, talk to players. And, they're obviously dealing with like 35, 40 players. It's not the same dealing with 10 or 12.
Yeah.
It's an awful lot easier, but there are similarities. And definitely, like, what I see now is, like, basketball used to have, particularly the structure under Tom Collins, say 20 years ago, they have what the GAA have now. But GAA have the structure, right? They even put it in their program for the All-Ireland final, the LGFA, about how they're in every school and the club. And basketball used to have that. Okay, it's still strong enough, but not as strong, because you've got the influence of the GAA. But probably the perfect Gaelic player is a Gaelic player that has been coached in basketball. And a really good basketball player would have the toughness of a GAA, a GAA player. So, like, good examples of that would be Lindsay Peat.
Yeah.
Looking at the league, most of the good but the tough basketball players probably played GAA at a good level. Like Jen Dunn now played basketball with Loretto Dockey.
And she's having a fantastic career already, and she's only 22, so it just shows the crossover because she was technically, let's say, a dual sport athlete, and I think she plays camogie as well.
Yeah, she she would have had picked up good habits from the basketball, like certainly as regards, the passing and, drawing a player and making a pass one way, maybe looking the other way. Big Bone will kill me for saying that. But that's what we should be.
Are you getting all the girls to do no-look passes at Dublin training, is it?
Passes. Is there any other type of pass? Other coaches have heart attacks there. They've heart attacks if you go no-look pass,
Yeah, exactly. Out of interest, I was going to ask about Lindsay. What was your first impression of her? Because she did say in a previous interview that maybe when she was younger, she was probably slightly uncontrollable, and you really stuck with her, particularly when she joined your setup.
Slightly uncontrollable.
I was giving her the benefit of doubt there.
Well, Lindsay, look, I learned, I said this in an interview, that Lindsay was like Braveheart. You couldn't really control her, like you could discipline her if it was, outrageous. You know what I mean? She had a fiery spirit, which would end up in kicking the basketball the odd time. You know what I mean? And and that's okay, but I wasn't having any of that. You know what I mean? But at the same time, it was really, Lindsay, just get back in line and let's go. Come on, you're better than that. And, and she usually was. And she'd come back and, like, for such a tough athlete, like, she played basketball tough. She played Gaelic tough. She played, rugby tough,
Mm-hmm.
For such a tough athlete. She's very sensitive, actually, as a person. A great person. And so you've got a good mix in there. She had all the qualities to make it at whatever she wanted to do.
Could you tell that from kind of very early on that you said this is a really special athlete here and she's going to go on and have success?
But she was passed over on Irish teams when I was involved in the setup. Might have been coaching that exact age group. Like I'd have been coaching the 16s and she'd have been approaching under 18. And she was a real ball, but they overlooked her for the national team. She only made her national debut as a senior.
Mm-hmm.
She never played underage as far as I remember. And I thought that was a travesty. Sometimes politics get in the way.
Yeah.
So, but like any of those coaches that didn't pick her, they must be looking back now going, my God, what did I do? And that no doubt drove her on when she was captain of DCU Mercy win the National Cup, and she also captained the senior Irish international basketball team,
Mm-hmm.
And I know that even when she said to me, look, I'm going to give the rugby a go, I had no doubt she was going to be successful.
Yeah. You did mention there that she had the qualities to have success. What would you, and to be a brilliant athlete? What are those qualities that you see in these elite level athletes that you come across?
Well, she has fierce determination and she wants to be better, in every aspect of her game. So you see those rare qualities in kids. The kids now probably don't. They're probably out being coached 5 or 6 times a week, between school and club, but the Lindsay Pizza this world and Suzanne Maguire's and all, they were all Sharon Kelly, Tara Fitzsimons, all these players that came through our program. Like they played outdoor basketball, in their school. I'd go up and put on the ghetto blaster as it was at the time. And I'd leave it on and they'd play 3v3 and 2v2 and 4v4, and they were just mad to play basketball. But like, you probably don't see that as much now with the outdoor stuff,
Yeah, it's definitely changed. Out of interest, then, when you have a team of a lot of, let's say, individual talent, and I know you've been involved in pretty phenomenal Irish teams like Susan Moore and Michelle Aspel, Michelle Fahy, how do you balance the individual talent and form it into a team? Because I think that's probably something maybe coaches don't realise. It's actually sometimes very difficult to bring together a bunch of very successful individuals.
It is, because you've got the star player in their club, each one of them, and then you're trying to put them onto a national team. someone that's used to starting all the time, you may have to put on the bench.
Yeah.
And explain to them that their role is going to be different on this team. But the girls are generally good at buying into that.
Okay.
There's kind of a hierarchy that it's kind of natural. When they go into practice and they go, my God, I didn't realize Susan Moore was this good. Didn't realize Michelle Fahey was this good. I'd probably be on the bench. They know themselves, I'd probably be backing up Michelle Fahey. That's the way they're thinking, I would imagine,
Yeah.
And then on the other side of that, say compared to the men's, like if you take a Dermot Connolly, you're not really telling him he's on the bench, are you? That type of thing. So, even though Jim did, but the girls would be far more aware of the girls supporting them.
Okay.
Where the guys might be, you're not getting my spot no matter what happens. You know what I mean? You can drag me off this pitch or drag me off the court, or you better have a good reason for taking me off. That's kind of the way I felt myself. So I could imagine that's the way they feel,
Yeah. Yeah, I know what you mean. And when you start with a new team, like for example, DC Mercy starting this year, and I know some of the players will still, they'll come back every year. But when you get a new team together, new players for the first session, how do you start? Do you have a structure that you usually go through, or do you change it up year to year?
It's a good question. This year was strange because we're coming back after 18 months with. I usually try and figure out what type of team we have.
Okay.
And I mean that, like, are we going to be a really good offensive team? Are we going to be a good defensive team? Where defense would probably be our mainstay. We want the players to express themselves on offense. And then we're trying to figure out, like, how many points you need to win a game, right? Probably 80. Where are we going to get 80 points? Who are we going to run the ball through? Who's our best passer? Who's our best rebounder? Have we forgotten, like, certain stuff that we used to do? Like certainly the team that won 2 years ago with Meredith Burkhall and that team with Sarah Woods, right? It's a completely different team than the team that's there now. So Sarah Woods departed. She's playing Division 1, dropped down because she has a young baby and stuff. And we had to figure out, well, where do we get the extra 20 points from?
Yeah.
So we have to share that, and we might run more dynamic plays for certain individuals. And then obviously when you have two Americans coming in, you've got to fit them into your system, and they would have played a certain way. So you're trying to, they would have come from a different system. So we might take one or two of their plays that they had in college and adapt it to the team rather than have to adapt everything to us,
Okay.
So we're still trying to figure out this team at the moment, but, we're hanging in. We're like near the top of the league. We're in the semis of the cup, There's an awful lot more in this particular squad,
And when you're figuring out the type of players, I know you're still trying to now, but particularly maybe at the start of the year, let's say not this year because COVID has really hampered things, but are you running loads of games at practice just to see how they actually play in a game? Because the thing I've discovered with coaching recently was we were training the girls for so long, but because there was no games, we couldn't see them in matches, and you train to play matches and you train to win matches. So it was actually funny kind of seeing them play for the first time.
Yeah. I'd more do game scenarios rather than matches. I think way too many coaches do matches.
Okay.
Like, we'll do a few drills and let's have a match, Yeah. Now, I don't know what, like, obviously you're 100% right. When you see matches against the opposition, you'll see what they're able to do or what they can't do. But as regards the training, I honestly think most coaches, like, if it's 10 minutes of shooting and 10 minutes of drills in any sport, and then a match at the end, I don't know really what you're going to gain from that type of a match. Might put them into game-like scenarios, maybe, a short match because you want to run a play. Or if it was Gaelic, you might say, right, okay, we're going to practice against the blanket defense, for 10 minutes, or we're going to transition. We're going to work on our transition back to defense for 12 minutes, or we're going to do it the other way. We're going to attack this team in transition, or we're going to do kickouts for 10 minutes, or, no, if you put that all into a match, say for 40 minutes, you might see 3 or 4 kickouts, 2 or 3 transitions. They might set up for two times with a zonal defense. So what are you writing down after that as a coach? What did I learn there? Or, Jenny played well in that match, or, Paul Flynn played well in that match. Does that mean you're going to start them in the next match? I'd like to see consistency in training where they're playing well, they're shooting well, they're running well, they just look like they're ready to go. And then I think also to leave them a little bit hungry to play the match is always a good thing.
Okay.
Leave a little bit of a taster.
Yeah, exactly. And how much, out of interest, when you run a training session, how much of it is the fundamental skills and trying to balance, yes, you need to do these plays and get the stuff right, but when you go to a game, you still need to be able to execute the fundamentals?
Well, to give you an example, one year I concentrated with DCU Mercy on just individual skills. We didn't do any tactics. We had a broad offense, 5 people out on the court, just 5 out, and we concentrate on reading the defense. But we did individual skills the whole year, did no tactics, right? The next year, I only did tactics, probably because I was getting a bit bored, you know what I mean? Changing it up for myself. But there was very little difference in the results.
Okay.
So I think you need a mix of everything, But we would certainly be a skill-based session most of the time for us. Okay.
And what do you see as the most underrated or overlooked skill in the game at the moment? What are we missing? Now. In basketball, yeah. What are we missing as coaches?
In basketball, in soccer, and in Gaelic football, finishing.
Okay.
Finishing is the key. Go to any game you've coached or you've lost, you'll be regretting, oh, we missed that shot, or we didn't execute this, or, I don't remember losing too many games, A, because of fitness, B, because we didn't run a play, C, maybe defensively we made a mistake, where you can be guaranteed there was some finishing in there that there wasn't enough of. I would, maybe going forward, I'll probably concentrate more on finishing.
Okay. And do you think some of that is down to like the mental side of things? Because I've had conversations, I had a great conversation with Jenny Cody, and we were saying how at the end of a game, let's say you're 2 points down and one of your star players hits a 3-pointer to win the game. And is it down to their character or is it their ability? Do you know what I mean? So it's like that mental side of being able to finish in, let's say, a cup final, free throws. That's a really big one in basketball. Just everyone, you can kind of psych yourself out really with a free throw.
Yeah, because you see, the free throw is a special skill. You have to walk up to the line. Mm-hmm. It's not as important, but it is as important at the start of the game as the end of the game. But if it's a young kid taking the free throw, they've time to think about the shot. So you probably need to practice that. Take your time, get your routine. Well, you do need to practice. Get your routine, and be confident. Mm-hmm. Like yesterday in the school game, we'd 4 free throws in the last minute. We missed the 4 of them. You know what I mean? Yeah. But they're young kids, and I've no doubt. Like, it didn't matter what I said. I said, look, you're going to be the hero here. You're going to make these 2 free throws. Now, we were 1 up, and she missed them, and then the next player missed them, and that was the player we wanted to get fouled, but she missed them, and we won by 1 because they held on. You know what I mean? But they trusted their defense, so that's always a good thing to have, in your back pocket, is that if your team is sound defensively, they'll trust it to stop the other team when they have to, Mm-hmm. Like, in fairness, taking a free throw at the end of the game, it's almost like, going to a swimming gal and you're not very good a swimmer. You have to dive into the water. So all that stuff goes on in your head. And yes, you can practice for it. But like, that's the reason there's so many books out on sports psychology and what we did. And like, why is a world star missing a 4-foot putt?
Yeah.
Because they perceive it as, big pressure putt. It's worth $2 million or, but it's only a 4-foot putt.
Yeah, exactly. Do you use sports psychology with your team at all?
All the time. All the time you're using messaging the whole time. You're using color, you're using games, you're using examples like the All Blacks or the Dublin teams, all the time. Without having an assigned sports psychologist. Yeah. Back to the Gaelic football, they have the funding to do that. They would have that. We can't afford that. So most coaches are part-time psychologists anyway, and it's really to try and get the players into the best space that they can to play.
Yeah, that makes sense. I was reading online before, you said in an interview that you watch a lot of the games from the corner of the court. Can you talk us through why you do that and what was the kind of thinking behind it?
That was very simple. One of the greatest coaches, well, probably the greatest coach of all time, is John Wooden.
Yeah.
And he always watched practice from the corner of the court because it gives you the complete view of the court without having to turn your head. You can take everything in. So even if and I was a point guard. So if you're a point guard and you go to the outlet position, which you know of, from that position, you can see the whole court. You can't see it from the middle of the court, and it's just good to take it in. You can also, it's better for judging the speed that the game is going at.
Okay.
That's just for now, For all those young coaches out there, it's a good thing to do. If we're under a little bit of pressure, i.e. we're gone down a couple of baskets, unknowns to myself, I go down to the corner of the court.
Just a habit.
Yeah, well, it's a habit. It's a good habit, though. It allows me to get away from the bench. It allows me to get away from the noise. I remember and then I try and see things a little bit clearly. And as I said, I think you're able to judge the pace of the game and certain things and maybe the plays a little bit better,
Yeah, that makes sense.
It works in soccer and Gaelic too.
Yeah, I was going to say, my next training session, I might try it.
So long.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true.
Binoculars would be good.
Yeah, you need a telescope for the corner. I had a great question in from James. He wanted to know who is the best combined player and coach duo that you've come up against. So it's not the best player or coach, but when they're together, they're like an unbeatable combo.
So in other words, some player playing out of their skin for a particular coach.
No, it's a coach and a player that gel really well together, and you've just that they're very good duo together. So they're not necessarily, it's not the individual that's the better, but when they're together as a coach and a player, they get the best out of each other.
Okay, the best example of that I've seen was a long time ago when Liam Harting was coaching a fella called David Gately, an American player. Now, obviously, back in the 80s, they had loads of superstar players over here. Kelvin Troy, all these guys, Terry Smith, Ray Smith, Jasper McElroy. Okay, they're fantastic players, right? But the best coaching example would have been David Gately. He was about 6'3", white guy. It's just every play that he ran, the coach ran, Liam Hartigan ran for him. Your man knocked down the shot. I'm going, boom, boom, boom. So if that's what you mean, I think that was the best example that I've ever seen.
Yeah, that's exactly what he was looking for. I was going to ask about basketball in Ireland, and at the moment we're seeing a lot of younger kids go abroad. For example, one of your former players, Brona Paracasti, she's having a lot of success in Holy Cross. CJ Fulton was named Player of the Week there for the Patriot League. Why do you see what's happening in Ireland that we're seeing kids go abroad, and not only go abroad but have success?
Well, those two particular players, Brona and CJ, obviously their family. I mean, Brona's father played for me with Malahide, and then obviously she's been with DCU Mercy since she was 4 years of age. So they've got a lot of good coaching with their family and through the club. And obviously with CJ, with Belfast Star, and his father, Adrian. So, they've been immersed in basketball. I think like the coaching in basketball at underage is pretty good level. So the kids seem to be very adaptable when they go over to the States, and they tend to flourish because maybe there's not that much of a jump.
Okay.
In certain cases,
Yeah.
Like I always ask my Americans that, like, Meredith Burkhall, the American from 2 years ago, she went to Iowa State, and that's Big 12. And I said, what score would you beat our team? She said 40. We played St. Joe's with half a team with just Lindsay, no Americans. We lost by 6. So it's hard to know, but like if the girls were training 6-7 days a week the way they were in the States, they'd go. I'm sure there'd be far more of them doing well.
Mm-hmm. When you're looking at bringing in Americans, is there anything in particular that you look for? Like, I know they'll obviously give you the game film, the resume, but what stands out to you, and what do you look for when you're picking your 2 players?
I had a very good conversation with Michael Jordan's college coach. He did a seminar over in the National Basketball Arena about 30 years ago, and I put that question to him. And he said, get 2 good people.
Brilliant.
And if you get 2 good people, you'll go a long way, because there's usually very little difference, like in the actual skill ability. Obviously, we'll get the highlight tape, we'll get the resume. Mm-hmm. If I'm lucky enough, I tend to go for certain leagues.
Okay.
Like, for instance, if they're coming in on a scholarship to DCU, True Sports Changes Life, you'd be looking at like the likes of the Patriot League or the Horizon League or the CAA, or, we're probably not going to be getting the players from the ACC.
Yeah.
So usually there'll be something in the resume and there'll be something on the tape that they'll do, and you go, yeah, I can definitely work with this player,
Okay.
But there is an element of when they come over, you're not really sure what you can do.
Okay.
Or how much you can get out of them, We like, I spent a lot of time in the summer recruiting, so it's not an accident, Before we go, if we have to go through an agent or, even with Sport Changes Life, they'll have people applying for their system, and I'll have been recruited. I'd probably be looking at players now for 2 years' time. Like, for instance, who's coming out of Brona's college next year? Well, Brona, what's she like? Great player, Mark. You love her. She's exactly the type our team needs, So that type of thing, Susan Moran is a great help, with players. She hears of players that maybe want to come over in Ireland and try that experience. And Bailey Greenberg is playing with us now. That's basically how she came. She'd applied to Sport Changes Life, but Susan Moran, her dad, played here. So that was an easy reference. And Susan said she's a great kid, so if you can get her, Mark, take her. So we did.
Out of interest, when you have players that, let's say you're coaching me and we have a conversation after training and I'm not particularly playing well, and you kind of put it up to me, or you're not playing well, but I don't accept the responsibility of my actions and I'm looking for excuses or blaming other things. How do you deal with that type of player that doesn't accept the 100% responsibility?
So you're telling me you're not playing well? All right.
Yeah. So you're telling me
not playing well.
Sorry, you're telling me I'm not playing well. Yeah, and I probably know in my head.
Well, we have to get you back to playing well. That's the key here, So Why are you not playing well, Orla?
Probably because I'm not prepared enough, and yeah, probably that.
Okay. Usually I'd find, Orla, that when players are not playing well, they're trying to make it more difficult than it is. So
Okay.
maybe keep it simple to start. Okay. Do a couple of things. Try and do a couple of things well in the next practice session, and we build from there. But it's not easy. You know, you might do something and then I might be in practice going, good job, Orla, that's what I want. No, more of that, Orla, let's go.
Yeah.
And if you can build on that, then, suddenly you're back playing the way you think you should be playing. And more importantly, you'd be playing the way I think you should be playing.
Yeah.
So there is that, but there's sometimes, no matter what you say or what you do, you can't get that. It's usually in their head, isn't it? It's usually I would imagine keeping it simple or doing something really like concentrate on your defense or concentrate. What do you do well, Orla? What do you see as your key set of skills?
Yeah.
What do you do well?
What do I do well?
Yeah.
Not much at all.
And no, that's not true. Now. Come on.
Probably, I don't know, probably shooting, but I'm not a good shooter, so that tells you how my basketball career
So you
gone.
do shooting well, but you're not a good shooter.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's take shooting. Where are you shooting from?
Probably the mid-range. Don't have a 3-pointer.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. And how many of them are you knocking in practice out of 10?
5.
Well, you shouldn't be shooting that shot, Orla.
Okay.
Okay. So when you're knocking in 6+, right?
Yeah.
Okay. You can shoot that shot in the game. So we would do some drills like that, right? So out of 10 shots, you got to make 7. You might have to make 6, 7 out of 10, 8 out of 10.
And is that a conversation you have with players a lot? Like when you're doing a shooting drill, it's
like you've got to prove to me that you can shoot before you there's no point telling me you're a 3-point shooter and you haven't shown me you can shoot 3-point shots.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So we were to shoot for 5 minutes. Okay, you can try this now, right?
Yeah.
You shoot for 5 minutes. How many shots do you think you should make from 15 feet? 5 minutes. Someone rebounding now. You're shooting.
5 minutes. That's a long time.
It is.
Yeah.
Have you ever shot for 5 minutes?
No, not from one spot anyway.
Oh, good, right?
Exactly. That's what I need to start doing.
Like seriously, my fella's not putting the ball over the bar. How many shots did you take from that spot in training, before training, after training, on your own, down St. Anne's Park? How many did you put over the bar from there? Oh, sure, I wasn't down there. Well, how do you expect better then? Yeah. You know what I mean? Like there's a certain amount. I haven't kicked a soccer ball besides an odd 5-a-side, in about 15 years, right? But if you threw a ball at me now, I could trap it and pass it. And the reason that is, I've done that for so long as a kid, and hours and hours and hours of just playing football, that I've never really forgot, right? Yeah. Now, the first match that I'd play in a 5-a-side now, right, I wouldn't be razor sharp. But after 4 or 5 weeks, I'd be getting sharper and sharper and sharper. Golf. If you're practicing your golf and you're playing your golf, you're playing well. If you're not, you're only self to blame. Yeah,
exactly.
Look, it's almost like how much are you willing to put into it?
Yeah.
Like for instance, I had this conversation with my team a few weeks ago, right? Big period coming up. We're playing Liffey in the Cup. We've got a couple of big games. The first 10 minutes before practice, what are the girls doing?
Shooting or practicing?
No, they're not. They're talking.
Oh.
They're talking.
Right, yeah.
It is important, but so is shooting. Could you spend 5 minutes shooting? You know what I mean? And then I had a little word with one of the Americans on her own. And she started coming in a bit earlier shooting. And then the next person joined her, and the next person joined her. Mm-hmm. And now they were mixing the shooting and the talking, but they're at least getting in some shooting.
Yeah.
You know,
Exactly.
it's all those little stories, like who's going to stay back after practice to take a few shots.
Yeah.
You missed 4 free throws the last game. What are you going to do about it? You have to like take some more free throws.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah, exactly.
so it's all those little builders, little Lego blocks that right through a season, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, you seem to give your players a lot of responsibility. Is that something you've always done as a coach? Like, for example, there, if I miss four free throws, would you expect me then to be at training 5 minutes early, doing my free throws? Like, that's the kind of sense I'm getting from the conversation.
Now you're getting it. I mean, that's the way it works. Like if somebody, look, I saw a little example here, right? We've got a Spanish girl playing with us this year, right? Nice kid, you know, new to the system. And we have these training tops, right?
Yeah.
And we can't get training tops now because of Brexit, and you know, we used to get ours from Greece, right? So I'd given out the last training top because you run out of them eventually.
Yeah, yeah.
So this one had no training top. So, you know, we told her to bring a black t-shirt and a white t-shirt. But what I didn't know was one of the Americans had given her training top. So she had, say, a black and a red one and a blue, a navy and a sky blue one. She gave her the club one so she'd feel part of the team. Now,
Brilliant.
That's a great sign for me of leadership. And when I see those little things happening, you know, it's really good for the team, you know. Or someone like, let's say they, hope the girls are not watching this, right? But
I'll send them all the link now, Mark.
Yeah. Let's say they text, can't make train, right? Or someone picks the phone up. Listen, Mark, I'm really struggling, you know, I can't make train tonight. And I'm gone. That took a little bit of courage now to pick up the phone and ring me to tell me you can't come training.
Yeah.
But that also shows a little bit of leadership and a little bit of responsibility. So all those kind of little things. Now, you might have to remind teams of like leadership and, you know, how to bring themselves together. And, you know, I'd say the 5 minutes before myself and Damien go into the dressing room, you know, the teams tend to have their own like powwow to sort out what needs to be done for the second half. So usually then you're probably just reaffirming what they've said, you know. The funny thing is, when I go in and say, right, girls, what were you talking about? Tell me. They never tell me. Do you know what I mean? But I get a good giggle out of that. Well, come on, keep going. What were you saying? No, it's okay, coach.
And for example, like with my girls that they're underage, or any coaches listening, how do you develop a leader? Like obviously the different personalities will take over and different experiences like that, like people come from America, but how do you teach leadership?
You know, the leaders usually announce themselves in little ways. If you watch them for a little while, you know, they obviously group before the training, do they? And just watch who's doing the talking among the group. You know what I mean? Like little things, like if I had that age group, even though like I'm in the hall and I could send them out to the equipment room to get the shot clock for basketball.
Yeah.
If I send them out for the shot clock and then 5 minutes later, I have to send somebody else out to get them, right? That first person is probably not going to be the leader.
Yeah.
You know, where you can almost sense it, like the kid that's going to find, you know, the shot clock are going to find their way.
Yeah.
Or they don't know how to do that. They'll ask somebody, you know, so they kind of announce themselves, you know. There's a kid there in first year right now. And she's a natural leader, right? But like the sports coordinator come up to me the other week and I think she's going to be the head girl in 6 years' time. And I go, how do you know that? And she just goes, I know. Well, there you go. You know what you know. You know what I mean? So they will produce themselves, you know. On a Gaelic team at that age group, you might need a couple.
Yeah.
It's such a
definitely.
big pitch, you know.
Yeah,
My
exactly.
for a three.
Hmm. How do you teach sort of communication? Because I'm finding with the team that it's funny, whenever you go near, it's kind of similar. They'll stop talking, but even amongst themselves, like, and I observe from afar, and let's say during a drill or during a match situation or whatever, the communication isn't there. And it's funny because some of them play basketball, and I would expect that to translate over. Obviously, some of this is now their confidence and self esteem, but for a team that isn't communicating, how do you approach that, and how do you teach it?
Well, I have a bit of a laugh with this one because um, if you go into training session with even with our team, I mean, the amount of conversations that are going on and talk, and it's
Yeah.
amazing. And they get on the court, they don't talk. Why is that?
I'm not sure.
They don't talk as much as boys as lads do. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Maybe that's from an early age, you know, playing sport or whatever. Maybe girls come in to sport a little bit later. You know, um, there's no doubt women are far better conversationalists than boys, right? We all know that. But for some reason, when they go on the court, like they definitely don't communicate. There's not like give me the ball, give me the ball. You know, there's none of that. Like I just maybe you learn that when you're a kid. You know,
Yeah.
I don't know. I think it's a real struggle. Is you'll usually hear with women's team, oh, we need to communicate better.
Yeah.
And like I'm listening at this stage. I'm usually going in my head. If you communicated at all, it'd be fantastic. Do you know what I mean? But also, you know, like I've seen this with basketball coaches, you know, like ball, 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 waste of time. Like,
Okay.
you know,
Yeah.
say stuff that's going to actually help, you know, and say it early, like screen left, screen right, you know,
Yeah.
let me here. I don't need any help. I'm good. I'm good here. I'm good. Like,
Yeah.
for instance, I asked the group there, had they watched The Last Dance? These are all good basketball players.
Yeah.
Out of 15, two.
Wow.
Wow, that's a wow, you know. And like when you watch that, the communication with the players is unbelievable.
Yeah.
If you're mic'd up on an NBA, you know, an NBA floor or a good, like if you want to be a good basketball team, you have to talk.
Yeah.
You know, like I suppose myself and Damien just relay our playing experience. Like we've a drill that we do for shooting, right? You call the shot that you want on the break.
Okay.
You dribble down the floor, you say bank, and we give you the ball and shoot a bank shot.
Yeah.
Say 15. Go on, Orla, what shot are you shooting?
15 footer. There you go.
Your favorite shot. Favorite shot that you can't shoot. And then we do the same with the three, right?
Yeah.
I guarantee you, we go straight into a scrimmage. They won't do that. Guaranteed. Because
Yeah.
maybe they don't value it enough.
Yeah.
You know? Like the same drill when I coached Colester, right? We'd have Adrian push the ball down the floor, Adrian Fulton.
Yeah.
And then our American was John Leahy. He just go three. And Fulty would throw the ball behind him. And John Lee would nail the tree on the as a trailer on the break. And that used to kill teams. But we practiced that. What I'm saying is it's very hard to get the girls to do that, you know,
Yeah.
consistently. I did read an article one time about getting girls to like be physical,
Yeah.
right? So it's not a natural thing for like women going around boxing each other around the place. It's not natural. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Not born that, not made that way. But he used to put them in the key and literally get them to push each other for 2 minutes, push and shove each other out of the key, just to get them used to pushing and shoving. You know what I mean? So maybe it has to be trained, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. That's interesting. I was going to ask, from your coaching experience, how do you think you've evolved as a coach from starting off to now? Have you seen a big evolution? Have you noticed anything you'd change majorly?
Well, I think you're always involved in the coach. I know that's a kind of a stock answer, but like I'm definitely trying different stuff each time. You know,
Okay.
it's trial and error. What you see, what works, and you know, the beauty for me is I was thinking about this the other day, like more so with Gaelic football, because I've done a lot of that in the last few years, right? Particularly in the summer. And like, how do you want the game to be played? What type of game do you want to play? What game do you think your team wants to play? Do they want to play a big defensive game, or do they want to play an attractive style of football or basketball? What type of game do you want to see? And you're kind of always aiming for, how did we play? How did we perform? Did we play the way that we're training? Is an attractive style, is good to look at, like, even just thinking back on my soccer career, you don't really remember all the wins, the trophies. I remember dunking a fella, you know what I mean? Putting the ball through his legs. And like, because I so wanted to do that. And like, I do that loads of times. And like, if I did it once a week, nutmegging somebody or making a right turn or, doing something that, you'd seen on the telly, or, I think maybe that's lost a little bit in sport now,
Do you think, the creativity,
bit of that, look, the amount of criticism, I was just saying this last night, that Ronaldo has got, because he doesn't fit in the system, and he won't press, and he won't do this, and he won't do that. And I'm going like, this guy has like over 800 goals, leading the Champions League, leading Manchester United scoring in the Champions League. Last 5 matches I remember he scored, and like, the guy's 36, but in great shape and all. So why would you not have him in your team? You know what I mean? Like, systems don't win. Systems don't win championships. Players win championships. Player to fit into a system, but you have to have a bit of artistry in there as well. There has to be room for players to express themselves. It's probably the joy of sport, expressing yourself, in whatever game you're playing.
Exactly. From your career as well as a coach, what do you think is the biggest lesson you've learned from sport?
Don't lose. No, there's loads of lessons in sport. They always say it's the journey. And it is, and it's the people that you meet. Like, if you're a professional in the game, obviously you're getting paid, and it becomes a job and all that stuff. If you're non-professional and you're involved in sport, it's the stories you're going to have when you're, old. When you're old like me, and you're sitting down with coaches, and it's having those stories and the fun. And from all my meetings with coaches or people that are involved in the sport, they're never talking about when we won this game by a point, and that, they were talking about something that happened on the way to the match, or or how did this situation, or a player not doing what he's told, but it was a funny situation. So that's probably, what one will learn from coaching. So obviously everybody feels better when you win. Do your best. I think that when you prepare for a game and you do everything possible, right, and lose by a point, even though your team has played great, like they say, that's the ultimate satisfaction, but you've still lost the game by a point. There's always something more you could have done, know, and that's the way I kind of figure it. What could I have done more to help this team win?
Okay. And do you do that at the end of this year, or is it maybe during a year or after a particular match? Would you kind of reflect a lot during the season?
The end of every week, or that I'd be doing that.
Okay.
You do it more when you lose rather, than when you win.
Yeah.
But like, we've a game now on Saturday, so, we practice tonight, so the session's already made out. That might be tweaked this afternoon sometime, but we'll be having a look towards the opponent. Like, at the end of the day tomorrow, like, we'll want to win, so that we know we can still, stay near the top of the league and be in position to be challenging, for the trophies.
Absolutely. Out of interest, if you could go anywhere in the world and watch any team or coach for a week, who would it be and why?
Who would it be and why? I'd like to go for a basketball team. I'd like to go watch Michigan State train.
Okay.
You know, I love the way they play and the way they're coached. You know, so if I had a week where I was invited over, that's what I'd like to do. Myself and Mark Scannell did go over to UNLV a good few years ago. We spent a day with Kruger. That was really good. Okay. You know, it was just good to watch them. They used the shot clock like for every situation. Okay. You know, like 6 seconds to go, 5 seconds to go, 2 seconds to go, 12 seconds. They just, everything was shot clock, shot clock, shot clock. And they also used their starters against their bench. They never changed the starters. The starters are the ones that are going to be playing, you know, which is an interesting thing because a lot of the time in the States, they coach the individual to be better because the individual is going to get the scholarship. The individual is going to be, you know, getting the pro contract. They don't, we tend to coach the teams over here. Yeah. And if like a Brona Cassidy gets good enough for a scholarship, well, that's happy days, but we're coaching the team, you know. And maybe, you know, maybe we should be coaching the individuals a little bit more. You know what I mean? And if you really want to be effective, you should probably be coaching the ones that are going to play the most amount of time for you, rather than coaching everybody equally. If you want to maximize your efficiency, like you know, if you coach 15 your best 15 Gaelic players, if you spend all your time coaching from 16 to 27, you know, the kids that are going to play for you are going to lose out. Now, you'll still involve everybody, don't get me wrong, especially underage, like under 15. It should all be skills, not so much worried about match tactics. Get them all up to a good level, strong group, all that type of stuff, you know. But when they get a bit older, 16, 17, 18, and you're making them competitive, you know, now you really need to be honing in on who's going to be, you know, doing the damage for you, you know.
Is there any particular coaching book or podcast, I don't know if you listen to podcasts, that you'd recommend to any of the listeners here?
Well, I'm more a reader than a podcast guy. There was one book, if any of the basketball, especially the basketball people, right? It's stuff good basketball players should know. Found that was one of the best books when I was starting off coaching that I read. You know, stuff that good basketball players should know. Don't ask me who the author is, but you know, it's a really good. I'm sure they can Google it. You know, I found that one of the best books. You know.
Brilliant. I'm going to move on to the sideline 7. It's the same 7 questions at the end of every episode. So you can answer it in a thought-provoking or fire round. It's up to you. Question 1, what is your favourite quote?
If it is to be, it is up to me.
Brilliant. Who said that?
Gary Player, golfer.
Very good. Do you use quotes with the team at all? Is that something you do, or is it not really part of your coaching?
Well, they've heard that one. You know what I mean? And no, I guess like if something comes to me on the day, or I have a feeling about the game or the opponent, or you know, I use them. Yeah, 100% use them. You know.
Mm-hmm. Question 2: what's the best sporting event you've been to?
Best sporting event. As a fan.
Was it? Yeah, as a fan.
I suppose the Ryder Cup.
How did you find the GAA matches? Were you involved on match day? Did you sit with the team, or were you somewhere else, or did you go in?
No, I sat up in the stand making observations. But then again, that was a job, you know, like, you know, I don't go to those games like cheering on, you know. When Kevin McManaman hit the net with a couple of goals, I certainly jumped out of the seat. But I was more thinking that's my job safe rather than happy days for the Dubs.
Yeah.
You know, those type of things. When you're doing the job, you're really just coaching and trying to remove yourself from the noise and the emotion of everything, you know. Even though you're totally helpless, you know, but you kind of are looking for, did I have any influence on, you know, what they're doing or trying to help them, or, you know, but I definitely had my homework done if I was meeting Mick Bone or Jim Gavin or anybody else for that matter that I was working for. I'd have my homework done for them for the next time on the observations or how we could progress the team, or, you know, what we could do, say if it was a drawn match and there was a replay, and how we would change, you know, what we would change to make sure it's not a replay the next time.
Yeah. And was that within your role? Like, sorry, I know I said I wouldn't talk about football much, but when you're coming into the team, are you totally focused on, let's say, the tactical side, or are you working maybe individually on skills with players? Was that ever something you did skills wise?
No, that wouldn't. Well, look, I'm coaching Raheny at the moment, right? Raheny in division, right? But like, so that'd be a head coaching role. So it really depends on what the role you're given.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Like there's enough Gaelic coaches there that can teach them to solo the ball, kick the ball, you know, hand pass the ball, whatever they want, you know.
Yeah.
If we were working on passing, you know, I might enhance the drill. Like if we work and say one ball, right? I might do the drill with 3 balls. Because if they can pass with 3 and they're on the move, they can pass with 1. You know what I mean? So might enhance the drills because I've been doing drills for so long, you know, and I'd be a big fan of that. You know, like I might ask, why are you doing that drill? I said, we've always done that drill. I said, exactly. How about this drill? You know, and even if I was coaching kids, you know, I would be doing a very difficult drill at the start. And you find their focus is amazing and they're trying to master it. And then when you reduce it down to 1 ball for them, they find it so easy. So I'd overpower them at the start. With the skill. You know, there'd be so much going on. They'd be like, oh my God, this is almost too much. And then reduce it down to the skill they'd have to use in the game.
Okay, that's really interesting.
Yeah.
Because I would naturally do the opposite way because you're trying to, but that's really interesting. I'm definitely going to kind of have a think about that. Question 3, what's the biggest setback or challenge so far in your career?
The biggest setback was probably when I went over to Manchester Giants coaching them in the British Basketball League. And we had a reduced budget, and my mantra, the job I was given, was to keep them from relegation because they knew the budget that they had against some big teams, big money. And we lost our first 4 games. And we lost them basically because we'd 4 new Americans and, you know, they hadn't played together and it was all that stuff. And, you know, again, the shooting wasn't up to scratch. So we introduced shooting drills for $10.
Okay.
So myself and John Leahy used to take on like the team in pairs for $10. You know, so they would have to pay us $10. You know, if you're shooting up to say 21 baskets from 4 spots, so maybe 5 spots, it'd be 100 shots. 100 shots, 5 spots, $10, right? And the first few weeks we won. You know, myself and John Lee won. And then the boys got pissed off from giving us $10. So they stayed back shooting the ball. And guess what happened in the matches?
Started shooting.
Was better, percentages were better. Boys were confident. And we started winning some games. But then the biggest disappointment or challenge was 9/11 happened and they lost a major sponsor. So I had to come back to Dublin and then resurrect my coaching career again, you know. So that was tough, you know, but still, if I'm going into a game and I'm feeling a bit wary about it, I'll always go, that's nothing compared to 90,000 people in Croke Park, job online, or coaching in Manchester, you're 6 down, to London Towers. They've just beaten Barcelona in the last round. Now you're playing. I always go, so that's all helps me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's
to put
interesting.
things in perspective.
What's been your biggest achievement then, on or off the court?
Biggest achievement. Basketball wise, is probably the continued success of DCU Mercy.
Mm-hmm.
We're in the top 2 or 3 every year. If we've not won it or won the cup or won the league, we played against some great Glanmire teams. We played against some great UL teams. Wildcats are good right now. So teams have fluctuated, clubs have fluctuated up and down, but we've been pretty consistent and being at the top. And I think that's a good sign of a good coaching structure and, good sponsorship from DCU and having the whole thing, the environment right. And, again, Ken Robson's been a big help to DCU Mercy over the last, 15 years. So sustaining that is really good.
Brilliant. Looking back, what advice would you give your 18-year-old self?
Don't wait for opportunities. I think I was waiting for an opportunity to be called by Man United or Newcastle as a young player. But what I didn't realize was there was daddies over here, say Ronnie Whelan's dad, who had knowledge of and was riding to clubs, where we were always kind of told, you'll be spotted. That might not necessarily, be true. Where even with the scholarships at the moment, coaches in America will hear of Irish kids, but it's no harm to have their video ready, their CV ready, be sending it out there so that they're ready for those opportunities. Sometimes you have to make the opportunities. So if I was to look back, I probably didn't make enough of my opportunities
at
that young age. But at the same time, I definitely made more of my opportunities as I got older as a coach.
Yeah, brilliant. Who would be your dream dinner guest and why?
Beyonce. You don't need to know the reason why. I know. I was watching a movie of hers the other night. That's why I said that. Maybe Billy Connolly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very good.
Or Mickey Flanagan.
Very good.
I'd like a good laugh.
Final question before I let you go. You've been so generous with your time. If your life was a book, what chapter would this be called?
To start.
To start. Excellent. Look, Mark, thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate that.
All right. See ya.
A big thanks to Mark for joining me on the podcast today. I just want to wish him and the rest of the DCU Superleague women's team the very best of luck with the rest of the season. If you are listening on Apple Podcasts and you haven't done so already, please do leave a rating and a review, as it does help the show grow. Be sure to visit the website thesidelinelive.com for more exclusive content such as player diaries and blogs, which are coming every week. Thank you as always for listening, and I'll catch you in the next one.